Welcome to Slammed, an Odyssey podcast where we cover everything Boston Celtics. And what a show we have today, because it got a little dramatic in what you would think would have been a kind of ho-hum game against the Chicago Bulls last night. But the Chicago Bulls came into TD Garden, pulled off the upset 117-108. And the headline here where we have to start is how the game ended with 3 technical fouls called at the end of the fourth quarter. It really got out of hand. Meghan Ottolini here from WEEI and Odyssey, joined as always by Esteban Bustillos and Justin Turpin. Esteban Bustillos of GBH, Justin Turpin of WEEI and Odyssey. Justin, you were there last night. They really focused in on this on TV in the very unprofessional setting that I was watching it in. And I'm wondering what you were able to take away from those moments being in person before we get to what everybody said after the game.
Yeah, you can feel the frustration building. I think they were frustrated by the fact that their shots weren't falling. Obviously, a terrible shooting night, and Chicago was hitting some tough ones as well. And you mix in that Chicago starts the fourth quarter on a 17-4 run. So the frustration was clearly there. And I think when the Joe Mazzulla when he got his first technical, he was the first one. It was on a tie up there, and he got it for stepping on the court. You see him kind of getting held back by assistants, which isn't really a surprise. It kind of does happen more than you would think, where he's restrained from assistants. And I think that's them just looking out to make sure he doesn't get rung up again and end up getting tossed. So you could feel it there. There was definitely a lot of frustration in the building last night, and it's been a weird week for them. So it was definitely something you can feel as much as you probably saw on the TV broadcast.
Yeah, we'll get into the rest factor with the shooting. It was a bad night, and they didn't look much better on defense, particularly in that fourth quarter when they got outshot. I want to say it was 35-22 is how much they got outshot by in the fourth quarter. But the sequence that all these technical fouls kind of got stacked up on was really Jaylen Brown trying to assert to the ref whose name is, and let me bring this up because I believe he's only done 3 playoff games in his entire career, Justin Van Dyne. So you have Tony Brothers out there. Now, of course, all the attention is always on Tony Brothers. Justin Van Dyne is the guy who gets into this confrontation with Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown wants to take a jump ball against Zach LaVine. Peyton Pritchard was there first. And so Justin Van Dyne is trying to have Peyton Pritchard take it. Jaylen gets a tech for arguing. And then he has this situation where basically he gets the tech is because he says that the ref was basically threatening him with the whistle. Here's him explaining it much better than I am in the postgame.
Like, you get fined. I got fined a couple weeks ago for like inadvertent gestures that, are determined not a part of the game, which was fine. I took the fine. But like, what part of the game is like a ref, calling inadvertent technical foul? And then like, I said to him, you called a tech for no reason. He said, if you say it to me again, I'm gonna call another tech. You call a tech for no reason. Then he called the tech. Like, man, get out of here. You can't threaten guys with a technical foul. That's not part of the game either. You want to fine people for gestures and all this stuff, fine that. Like, that's some bullshit. Like, we were down 3 at that time on the jump ball. Then that led to us being down 8. That affects the game. That could have been avoided. Joe didn't say anything to deserve a tech. And then when I come up to you and say, you're getting a tech for no reason, as a captain, before the game, I come and shake all the refs' hands because I speak for my team. I'm allowed to talk. So when I tell you, you just called a tech for no reason, and you say, if you say it again, I'm going to call another tech, then I say it again and you call a tech, you just threaten your whistle as a threat. Like, that's not a part of the game either. And I think it's bullshit.
So, Esteban, do you think that Jaylen Brown seemed out of line by the way that he asserted himself with Justin Van Dyne and that particular situation?
Well, first, I think the first thing I'll say about like Jaylen Brown just this whole week, I'm sure it's been a difficult week for him, as has been reported widely. His mom's home was broken into, and then multiple local media outlets were like, let's broadcast images of the home.
Like, so crazy, guys.
Yeah. So, as a member of the press, I was like, that's ridiculous. So I'm sure it's been a stressful week, and, he only had 19 points. But I'm sure that, as Terp said, there was just a lot of frustration in general. Now, was how the refs handled it great? Yeah, probably not. But the refs didn't get outshot 35-22. The refs didn't shoot 25% from three. So, my general rule is that unless there is like an exceptionally egregious example, like when the Rams held the Saints in the NFC Championship game and they didn't, no PI was called, you can't blame officials for how a game ends. A game is a sequence of events, not one event. And the Celtics got outplayed in the fourth quarter. But
Absolutely.
But it was bad.
And Justin talked about the way that fourth quarter started and just getting basically run down defensively. I will say that in that instance with the tech, when that was called and things got a little out of control, it was still a 3-point game, unless, correct me if I'm wrong, Justin, but I think it was 99-96. And it did feel like, I agreed the Celtics looked really rusty. It was probably one of their worst games of the season overall, just 2 games in 11 days. And you saw what that product looks like for them. But at the same time, that did feel kind of like a pivotal point in the fourth quarter.
No, it's true. It's true. And I'm sorry, Trevor, I'll just say it too. It's just a bad game. There's just a bad game, and those happen. Like I don't think the Celtics are going to shoot 25% from three many nights.
It's weird to see them collapse like that, though. Like usually when they're not shooting well and things aren't going their way, they don't really lose composure. They stay poised and find a way to win. And it's kind of like an older Celtics loss, right? Like we used to see that in the past where things weren't going their way. They would get frustrated. They'd start getting technical fouls, start settling for isolation, whatever it may be, and they ended up losing games. That hasn't been the case over the last 2 seasons. So when they revert to that, like they did last night, it's a little bit weird. And with Jaylen Brown's technical, just back to the original point, I do kind of fault him a little bit. Like I understand it's been a very stressful week, and he was clearly not himself last night. And even at the podium, he was frustrated before the game. He wasn't interacting with fans as much as he usually does. Just clearly not himself, and completely understandably. But when the referee tells you, don't say that again, or I'm going to call a technical foul, and then you proceed to say it, what did you expect? Like he warns you, and that's poor officiating, right? The ref should not be using his whistle as a threat. Jaylen is absolutely right in saying that. But he did, and he told you he was going to call a technical if you said it, and you pretty much dared him to call it. Like that's just a loss of composure. And again, I really don't like making excuses, but I do think Jaylen does get a pass for that just because last night maybe he shouldn't have even played. He was clearly not himself, and credit to him for going out and giving it his all, and I do respect that. But yeah, I mean, he did kind of earn that one. Like Joe's was a little bit different because you don't really see players or coaches get called for the out of the box technicals, especially when it's right in front of the bench. I mean, he really took like 2 steps in front where the play was developing. But with Jaylen, it's like he warned you and you dared him to do it, and he did.
Yeah, I think with Jaylen, like I agree with that. I think frustration is the right word to describe the feeling overall with the team. And with Jaylen in particular, off-court stuff, there's sometimes that it's really hard to divide the two, especially when you're such a public person and you're in TD Garden. So, I get it. And I get the emotions in the moment and maybe not handling it the best or most productive way for the game itself. Joe Mazzulla had quite a moment at the end of the game where he had to be restrained by Sam Cassell and other assistants, as well as security personnel. He looked like my dog when I just walked her over to the tennis courts and she saw a Great Dane on the other side of the fence. And it was like, I was like, oh my God, let's get back. Come on. We don't have time for this right now. Let's move. I think he's probably going to get some kind of weirdo fine for that. He'll probably, I don't know, 25,000 or something. Just for that, whatever as he would say, and we'll play it right now, the season's greetings that he was offering the refs. So let's hear from Joe Mazzulla post game.
After the game, looked like a couple of assistants and security guard needed to kind of hold you back. What message were you trying to deliver there?
I just hadn't seen them in a while, so just a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. I wasn't sure I was going to see them before the holiday, and I just can't let a moment go by to where you wish someone, just the best, to them and theirs and their families.
So a little bit of levity. It's not that common for Joe Mazzulla to pick up a tech, and I do think that this was a tech for him that was born again, so much more out of emotion. And you can say it was ticky-tack, stepping out of the box. He didn't get the foul for what he said to the refs. He got the foul for his placement on the court. And so it's just one of these things where it becomes that much more interesting when they go to Chicago on Saturday, because look, Zach LaVine did drop 36 on you. You know,
He was
you
great.
didn't lock him down at all. So now I love these little mini series where you have teams playing one team, not quite back to back, but basically with one game in between. It feels a little bit more like a playoff series. So we can see how they adjust and who they're going to play, because the other side of this that was disappointing was, outside of Sam Hauser, this was a full Celtics roster. And so you have Porzingis, Holiday, Derek White, and Jaylen Brown had all the reason in the world to be off. But those guys, I mean, that's just, none of those guys could. Jason Tatum was basically the only starter who could hit anything from behind the arc.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But like I said, I think there's gonna be games like that where that just happens, and that's just basketball. And I'm sure it'll be a different situation in Chicago this weekend. But yeah, I mean, and as weird of a career as he's had specifically, like Zach LaVine is still one of the best guys in the league. So he's going to go off on any given night, and
especially when he wants to get traded.
Yeah. So it's any team can be any team in the league, and Chicago is, I think, 9th in the East right now. So they're not a terrible team. Like there's a very good chance that they're in the mix come playoff time. So I wouldn't, I'm not necessarily thinking too much of this loss. I am wondering, like, what would have happened if they just let Joe Mazzulla go? Like, does he actually fight a ref? Like, isn't some of that just posturing? Like, I don't think he's crazy. No, I would hope he's not crazy enough to actually physically confront an official. I think he just gets in his face, but I don't think he fights a ref, right? Or is
I also think he was just getting his money's worth and sending a message to his team.
That's fair.
He obviously didn't like how it was conveyed. Remember in D.C., right when they visited the White House, he took a technical foul to try to manipulate the energy of the arena. He said, I think he missed an opportunity to do that during the game because he tried to, but it wasn't really there. You muted, Megan. Sorry.
There you go.
Manipulate the energy of the arena is just so...
Yeah, that's what he said. So
bizarre.
I do think, first of all, he was trying to get his money's worth. Most importantly, like, you could tell the lip readers out there that they've been busy this week between what we saw in Arizona on Sunday and now this. The lip readers are busy trying to see what people are saying, but you can clearly tell what Joe Mazzulla was saying, and it was not Merry Christmas.
No, it wasn't.
Say that.
Has he? Two questions. One, has he ever actually been ejected? I can't think of a situation where he has. And two, who's number 2? Is it Cassell?
Cassell would step in. Yeah, he would step in. I believe he did get ejected once last year. It actually might have been against Chicago.
Okay, but there we go. Maybe there's a history.
The effort to find that, the research department.
No, it's
all
all good.
Well, while you do that, I do think that, again, that this was just the second game in 11 days because of the NBA Cup. It's just been a really strange schedule where the Celtics played a bunch of games all at once, and then they've had this slow period for the last 2 weeks. And the other day at practice, we heard Joe Mazzulla talking about there is a danger to having this time off, and I think he saw it last night. So I do think that, again, like, this is not terribly indicative of who the Celtics are. It's just a bad night. But the reffing stuff, I don't have a whole lot of patience for that. And I don't have a whole lot of patience. Like, I don't want this to become a trend of something that we have to talk about, like Celtics versus the refs, technicals at the end of the game, technicals and situational stuff. Like, I just don't have patience for that.
And he was ejected against Chicago when he was in interim.
Okay, so it's a Chicago thing, maybe.
Chicago. Yeah, it was. But to that point, too, and you were talking about them seeing Chicago, obviously, Saturday night. You look at it, too, like, they got beat at their own game. They've only been outshot on the three-point line twice this year before last night, and they won both games. But they got outscored on the perimeter by 15 points last night. Like, that's extremely rare for this team. And I thought a lot of their looks were pretty open. Like, they do a great job of – see, that's the thing is it can be skewed when you look at their box score numbers and you see all these missed threes. You think they're just pulling up, jacking up threes in their isolation, whatnot. I thought most of them were clean looks. They just weren't falling. And they continued to stay with that, and they continue to just play the process. And you're a good shooter. These guys are all above league average career three-point shooters. These shots aren't falling. That just adds to your frustration. So you're not hitting these open shots. And then there was a time in the third quarter, especially where I think it was Levine hit a three and Derek White just kind of threw his hands up. He was like, "Oh, like, come on! Like this is insane!" Like you saw the frustration. Like it's beyond, and I know that's the best word to describe what we saw at the end with the referees and the officiating. But the frustration went beyond that. It was the lack of finding ways to put the ball in the net. Like they couldn't do that last night, and you're not going to win games and you can't do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so as we said, they're going to see Chicago again on Saturday. That'll be an interesting matchup just because you hope that they can split this little mini series and show something better on both sides of the court, because especially the beginning of that fourth quarter, the defense just wasn't there. Then they see the Magic on Monday. And last I checked, you can fact check me here if it's changed in the last 2 days, but the Magic had the third best defensive rating in the league. I had to imagine that they're still top 5, if not top 3 in that rating. That's a good defensive team who's probably going to be missing a couple of their key players because they're dealing with injuries. But I could see a possibility, like a situation where this is a less disciplined Celtics team than we expect them to be. And these games coming up, you have the Magic, who are a defensively identity team without some stars. You have the Sixers on Christmas Day. They're just a dumpster fire. It's very easy at this point in the season to start getting a little bit complacent. And I think that that's the big challenge for this upcoming week.
Yeah, I think the Magic are strange in a sense because, like you said, they're obviously a strong defensive team. Paolo Banchero has been gone like a month and a half at this point with his injury, and I don't believe it is expected to play. I was just looking it up; still hasn't done anything with contact yet, as far as I know. So, I mean, as good as they are defensively on paper, I don't necessarily see them keeping up with the Celtics. Again, any given day, any team in the NBA can beat any other team. But still, I think you're right, Michael. It's just like, do the Celtics let this sort of middle of December, it's cold, Christmas is on your mind, get in the way? I do think they do get up for the Christmas game no matter what. It's like, it's Christmas. You're only one of 8 teams that are playing. It's a special thing against someone who is still as weird of the season they're having is a rival. So no matter what happens over these next 2 games, I do think they get up and they Christmas, they're locked in, because you should be. You're nationally televised. Everybody's going to be watching. If they don't, if they just lay an egg on Christmas, then there's like a discussion. I don't necessarily think that's what we're going to see.
It is funny with the Magic too that they lost 2 of their best players with oblique injuries, both of them. I feel like that's not necessarily a common injury, but Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero both with oblique injuries. That's so bizarre.
You calling out the training staff over there?
I don't know what they're doing over there. I don't know what's going on over there, but it's
many medicine ball Russian twists. Maybe that's what I always think about with the oblique stuff.
But that team, Orlando, especially with their defense and more their length and their athleticism, because the Celtics really aren't the most athletic team when you look at it. They're a very good team. They're obviously one of the most skilled teams, but in terms of athleticism, they're really not one of the most athletic teams, and Orlando can give them trouble with that, try to get them in transition and kind of make some disruptions with their length on the defensive end. So I'm interested to see that one, but I'm with you, Esteban. I think they get up for the Christmas Day one at home against a team that they don't really like. And there's obviously a competitor factor between Jason Tatum and Joel Embiid, both true handling clients, and they work out together in the offseason. So they want to get up and try to beat each other in that one.
Yeah, and the other thing, yeah, that's true. The other thing I'll say too is these next 2 games on the road, but then starting with that Christmas, it's a beginning of a 4-game home stretch, and so I think if there's any time to sort of get through the doldrums of this midwinter basketball, it's there. They'll have time to spend time with their families or whatever, and then play basketball. And also, by the way, I think they go to Minnesota on January 2nd. So there is big time. They go Minnesota, Houston, Oklahoma City, and Denver all on the road.
That stretch is going to be so fun. That's a wild road trip.
Stretch. And only 1 10 o'clock start in that stretch.
Woo. God bless.
That's good.
Great.
It's Tuesday night in Denver. So that's the only 10 o'clock start. but not bad. That's going to be a fun stretch. And I think that was one at the beginning of the season. A lot of people probably circled to see like how ready is this team? Are they, I mean, obviously they're the best team in the league, and I don't think you'd be hard pressed to find someone that would feel otherwise, but how do they shape up against other teams in the West? Because they really haven't played a ton of Western Conference
They
teams.
haven't. And I really had that OKC meeting circled on January 5th for like the last 6 weeks because I'm so curious to see how these two teams match up against each other. I don't know what Chet Holmgren's status is right now or whether we can seriously expect to see him. But I was really disappointed by the NBA Cup championship because I was like, I wanted OKC to emerge as this big bad in the West, and instead they look like a team it's still too early. Well, so that was a bummer to me.
Yeah, I will say it wasn't as bad. Like the Celtics didn't shoot as bad as OKC did, but like that their 3-point shooting, I forget the numbers, but it was like I audibly gasped.
They're one of 17 in the first half. I know that.
Yeah.
My head.
I think it was in the single digits, and I just remember being like clutching my
disgusted.
Pearls. Yeah. So
how dare you in this modern era?
Yeah, I think it was a bit of an aberration for them, but it was like one, like, oh, is OKC, to your point, ready to make that jump? And two is like, oh, wait a second, Milwaukee may kind of be back, not as bad as a lot of us thought. So yeah,
I agree with that. All right, well. Now that we've previewed 2 weeks from now what all the fun Celtics matchups are going to be, we do have some coming up. We're going to have a little bit of a hiatus during the Christmas/Hanukkah holiday, just a couple days off. I think we've all earned it, but we will be back with all your Boston Celtics content, I promise. And please keep reading all of our work on weei.com. Justin putting up tons of stuff there weekly. I write on there as well. And subscribe. Like, slammed, give us a follow on any social media platform, be it Twitter, be it Instagram, at Slam WEEI on Instagram is the handle. And we'll be back with an episode very soon, I promise. Happy holidays, everybody.